Thank you. Sarah Nuñez is our next and final speaker before we go into our breakout groups. Sarah is a healer and an organizer with Mahente. Sarah was born in Bogota, Colombia, raised in North Carolina. She's a cultural worker and healer, weaves storytelling, art, practice, and movement building through her work, organizing and activism. She organizes in Mahente, Louisville, which is a political home for Latinx and Chicanx people who seek racial, economic, gender, and climate justice. So we look forward to hearing from Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you to everyone who spoke. What a powerhouse, badass group of people we have here today. And excuse my language if that's offensive, but wow, just beautiful to see you all and to be here. You know, it's so much was said already, and I love all that was said. And Alita, you're inspiring. It's like, you know, this colonial thought, right? Like what was it like for people to come into the Americas and colonize people? Like just the simple fact that they could come through and brutally murder and take over complete communities of indigenous people living both in North America and in South America. And I think that, you know, one of the stories that I'm reminded of is in being in community with you all tonight and listening to everyone is what it's like to actually live in a militarized state. And what we experienced across Latin America, and you know, so many of the people who immigrate to Kentucky are still the first generation of folks that what we experience here. Now, if you're in other parts of the country, you have, you know, first and second and third generations of folks, and depending on the area, right, those experiences will be very different. But here specifically in Kentucky, a lot of folks, it's still the first generation of people coming. And we've come from countries which have had far-right militia, you know, leftist guerrilleros, and then also, right, the central space, which is like the government. All very corrupt and all at war with each other. And so I think that it's also important when we talk about what it's like to be, you know, Latino in the United States or Latinx in these spaces, is that our communities come from, you know, militarized, straight up militarized police. I mean, you don't just see a cop standing on the side of the road. You know, you see very big guns and lots of green, you know, outfits, right? With the, you know, the military outfits. And right, those factions were absolutely 100% funded and provided training by the US government, right? So that's a really harsh reality, I think, for us as our people to like even like come to terms with. So just go back in history 50 years on Latin American history and choose any of the countries. It's pretty brutal. And all of those fights were funded by the US government, right? So we already have, and I think what we see and what I vision in the future, what is two-handed, right? It's like, I believe that our people are strong. They're reaching liberation. We are dreaming up the world that we want to create. We're figuring out new ways to like protect each other. So there's that, right, on this one hand. And on this other hand is this like brutal reality of the histories that we come from, secret police, alt-right militia, and the militarization of our current, this country, United States government, happening, right, like in front of our eyes. And so I think that that's the piece that, like, you know, our community is absolutely in fear. It's paralyzed sometimes to even be able to mobilize around action because of where we've come from. You know, it's, you would be in most Latin American countries, if you stood up and had voice on any particular issue that was probably against any one of the factions, you just die. I mean, you know, you get killed, murdered for being subversive. Right? And so in this country, we lost all of our civil liberties after 9/11. I mean, and that kind of stuff affects all kinds of people, not just the Karinas and the Alithas, right, right, it affects all of us. And so I think that it's getting worse. I think that what we see happening on the streets with the curfews and the shutting down and the gassing, right? These are all tactics that have been used for a very long time in countries across Latin America and other countries as well, all trained and backed by the US government. And I think that's the piece that we need to be alert of and clear around how we build strategy to try to fight back, because it's a pretty big system, and it's very, very wealthy and pretty corrupt, and also, right, like helps to fuel the prison industrial complex, which also, right, helps get people elected, which is gerrymandered our states to be able to like it's all systematically created in this way. So I think policing absolutely is horrible for our communities on so many levels, and it's only going to get worse. And so as we hold these realities, these really, really harsh realities, what are we going to be doing to be sure that we're creating this world that we want to live in? What does that look like? What is this divest, invest, the defunding of the police? How do we reinvent our communities to have safety? Folks don't call the cops. I mean, I'm not going to call the cops if something goes down. I'm going to call, right, my people who have the ability to protect me and whoever it is that is involved in the situation. So, I've got some ideas, I think that through our work with Mi Gente, there's some things that, we're working to try to, do on a national level and sometimes even on a local level. It's like the separation of police and LMPD and campus police, right? And ICE. So Immigration Customs Enforcement working with any of police agencies, right, make it worse for our people. So the separation of those types of duties. Looking also into the technology companies that are actually out here surveilling us and making it even harder to, it increases our chances of being targeted through these tech companies, which, most of our large industries, universities and cities are actually contracting with these tech companies, right? Like making them more and more money and allowing them to increase their technology to, sort of target and surveil folks. And so, yeah, this profit over people, policing is it's like a pandemic, right? Killing people. And I just am afraid that it's going to get worse and worse with the heightened military presence. It's kind of like this idea when I was at the US-Mexican border and I went through a border crossing. I'm not sure if anyone has ever gone through, it's about, I think they have up to so many miles from the border that they can set up these border patrol stations. And you go through a station, you got to show all your papers. And, it's not, it's a scary experience, especially if you may be someone who has, sort of a precarious immigration status or have family that might have that. And so, to me, it feels like sometimes it's like Border Patrol, and they're armed and they're very systematic in how they sort of target folks. But, it's like Border Patrol coming to any town near you, right? Any city, USA. And I think we saw that in Portland when Border Patrol agents ended up actually there, picking up protesters. So, and it's not to spread fear or to make it but the realities are what they are. And I think our communities coming together to create systems and protective ways for folks to be protected is one of the better strategies that we can move forward with, as well as some policies and some other, ideas. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you all. And I look forward to the conversations that we're going to have in a little while.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Sasha. Sarah, will you give us some closing remarks?
Sure, thanks. We had such a dynamic, great conversation. Trisha said and talked about we need to look for a way forward. And in our group, we talked a lot about how learning is so essential. And so essential so that when the time comes, you all are going to be ready to take action. And so, healing is part of this journey that we're on. And so I urge you to find your people's stories and tell them even how brutal they may be, right? Like part of our own, this work is about getting deep and down with who we are and where we come from. So I think finding that for yourselves can help to get you ready, ready to unlearn the crap that you've been given and ready to unleash this new story, your own story, your family stories, as well as to create, this new future story for what we're wanting to do. So just encouraging everyone to get ready and stay ready.